The movie opens with the depiction of two brothers. Nathan, the younger of the two, was nicknamed Nate. Both brothers sneak inside a museum and attempt to steal a map. Meanwhile, police officials arrive and transport the children to an orphanage. They actually have no parents and have spent their entire lives in an orphanage. Nate's older brother made numerous attempts to steal the map because Nate and his brother come from a family of pirates. The map revealed the secret of a treasure. The orphanage's sister informs the officer, "You can take Nate's older brother because he's still pretty young." Because despite being restrained, he used to rob. However, Nate's older brother refuses to hand himself to police. As a result, he decides to depart. He enters his room in order to pack his belongings. Nate tells his older brother, "I can't live without you." Nate receives a necklace, a lighter, and a letter from his older brother. He then walks away stating, "I'll definitely come back." When Nate opens the letter after his elder brother has left, he receives a message after putting the lighter's light on. It was written with the knowledge that we come from a pirate family and will almost certainly meet. The scene turns afterward and we witness the period after 15 years have passed. We see Nate, now an adult who works in a bar. In addition, he used to rob. When Nate was working in a bar, he was visited by a man named Victor. He informs him that he is familiar with him and his brother. He claims that they used to collaborate at one point. Nate, on the other hand, was uninterested in learning about it. He tells Victor to go, but he leaves a card for him on the way out. Victor's address is written on the card. Nate enters his house in the next scenario. After arriving, he notices the map that he and his brother attempted to steal. Meanwhile, Victor arrives and says that if you had arrived, you would have told me then. Nate informs Victor that this is the same map that so many others have been looking for. This is a treasures map. Many people have dedicated their lives to this manner without achieving anything. This was a pointless story. This isn't a pointless story, Victor assures Nate. I'm sure you and your brother both know a lot about this map. Victor later gives Nate a book and an image of a ship. This isn't a regular ship. It's an antique ship worth $500 million. Not only that, but the ship also has buried wealth on board. This was kept by a group of 18 persons. Victor couldn't possibly let him go because he knows so much about the treasure. Now he extends an offer for Nate to work with him, but Nate declines. Victor says that, "If you accompany me, you can get your brother." Nate goes to his house and begins to see the things of his brother. Later, he agrees to work with Victor. The next morning, we witness Nate giving Victor a cross sign. He explains that this isn't a cross sign, but rather the key to unlocking the treasure. Victor claims to have one of the keys, and the other must be stolen quickly. Victor claims that the other key is in the hands of an auction company, and that key will be displayed shortly. We'll have to steal that key soon. Victor steals the key after visiting that company. He was returning from where he had stolen the key. After pointing the knife at Victor's throat, a girl named Brett arrives. She is following her boss's orders and handing over this key to me. She was doing this under her boss's instructions. This was Victor's former enemy. When they were both battling for this key, meanwhile, some guards arrive, which Victor takes advantage of. After obtaining the key, he flees. Victor travels to Barcelona after receiving the key. They run upon a girl named Frazer, who is already acquainted with Victor. She, on the other hand, is unfamiliar with Nate and inquires about him. Victor introduces him as an old friend. Nate realizes that the other key is with Frazer, not Victor. Nate confronts Victor and demands, "Why did you lie to me?" Frazer claims that you may be completely unaware of the situation. Frazer exits the scene while stealing the key as they were bickering. Frazer was rushing ahead of Nate as they chased each other. Frazer, who was seated in her car, was preparing to go. However, Nate appears in front of her car, and Victor also comes there. He tells Frazer to grab the entire treasure, but you have no idea what it is. Only Nate is aware of the situation, and after hearing it, Frazer agrees to work with them. Nate tells them that the treasure was hidden near the church by those 18 people many years ago. They arrive at the church. After arriving, Nate begins to notice the cards that his brother has handed him. As a result, he is confident that he is in the right place. The three of them are currently taking refuge in the church's basement. They find the key's activation location. The key was hidden beneath the statue. They don't know, however, in which direction the key should rotate. Both keys must be rotated clockwise, Victor reads in the book. As a result, arrows start to erupt from the statue. 3 of them, though, remain uninjured. After taking the risk once more, Nate and Frazer rotate in an anti-clockwise direction. After that, a path appears behind the statue. The path took a way through a cave. Later, Nate informs Victor that we must use separate routes when traveling there. He claims that Frazer and I will take the same way. You'll take one path, and Victor and Nate connect their phone's GPS. One way leads to Nate and Frazer, while Victor takes another path. Nate and Frazer come to a bar while walking via the underground path. There was a secret way there that no one knew about. Some people attack them before they leave that path. To stop him, Nate fights with him. Frazer, on the other hand, is attempting to open the door. Nate and Frazer depart from there after the door is opened. They discover a third door that can be opened with the cross key can open. Water begins to flood the door as Frazer tries to open it, because the first door must be opened before the second door can be opened. Only Victor can open it. Victor was attempting to open the door on the other side. Meanwhile, the same girl who had previously attacked him appears. Both of them are in a fierce battle. Nate and Frazer, on the other hand, were caught in the water and about to pass out. Victor knocks the girl out and places the key on the locked door. Nate and Frazer eventually make it out of that door safely. It was now my turn to enter the final door. However, no one knows how to unlock that door. Victor was keeping an eye on them from a hole outside. Meanwhile, Nate employs his intellect and requests that Frazer deliver the other key from Victor. Victor, on the other hand, does not trust them and refuses to hand up the other key. Victor eventually hands over the key because he doesn't have any other choice. On the door, Nate notices a symbol. When Nate combines the 2 keys, the same symbol appears on the door. As a result, they open the door. When they walk through that door, they see 3 giant pots. Victor, on the other hand, kept pestering Nate with questions about the treasure. Nate turns Frazer upside down to discover what's inside the pots. When Frazer looked into the pots, he noticed that there was a lot of salt in them. It implies that there was no treasure to be found. Meanwhile, one of the 3 pots breaks. They notice that a map appears from there. This was the actual map for getting to the treasure. Frazer raises his gun at Nate as he sees him. "What do you think?" she says. "Victor has told you the truth." She fires the gun at Nate's head, knocking him unconscious. She goes from there after taking the map from there. She also takes the keys with her as she leaves. Victor later approaches Nate and observes him faint. They learn Frazer has deceived them when Nate wakes up. When Nate regains consciousness, he inquires about his brother. "What you've kept concealed from me, and what you've kept hidden from me?" He claims that he and your brother went treasure hunting many years ago. For that, we needed to steal a book, which we did. The residents of Mercado had opened fire on us as we returned. Your brother was hit by a bullet as a result, and he died as a result. After hearing this, he becomes emotional and begins to cry. He informs him that you have left him to die. You're now relying on me to deliver that treasure once more. Victor, on the other hand, claims that I have lied, but it was also your brother's wish for you to carry on his dream when he died. Nate assures me that I will go find the treasure and fulfill his ambition. But after that, we'll have our own paths to take. Frazer is later seen with Brett and her boss, implying that she worked for them. Brett's employer has informed her that she will now work under Frazer. Later, Brett's employer goes on a treasure hunt with his crew on a plane. They've taken everything vital with them. Brett's supervisor was bragging about it to everyone, saying, "It's my treasure. That has been misplaced by my family for a long time." Meanwhile, Brett shows up and ends up killing his boss. Frazer realizes that after killing her boss, she will now kill herself. So in order to save her life, she hides in the plane car. Brett orders her men to shoot Frazer if they find her anywhere. Meanwhile, Nate and Victor were looking for Frazer. Arrive on the plane while seated in the car's dicky. They took the map while looking for Frazer and used it to their advantage. Later, Brett and Frazer begin to start firing. They were firing at each other. Victor tells Nate that we found the map and should go by taking the parachute. Victor leaves by taking the parachute while Nate stops and asks Brett, "You've killed my brother." After attaching the cargo with the parachute, he opens it. As a result, the luggage from the plane begins to emerge. Brett's people begin to fire at Victor and Nate. Meanwhile, Nate's foot gets stuck in cargo. He begins to toss in the air with the luggage. After trying a lot, he again comes into the plane. Meanwhile, Frazer begins to jump from the plane by taking a car. Nate was also standing there, and he also falls along with the car. Both were falling, and Frazer asks Nate to open the parachute. But Nate hasn't taken any parachutes. They were flying in the air, but meanwhile, Nate opens a parachute of a cargo. They're both going to be in that cargo. They arrive at the sea using the parachute. They arrive at a beach and stay at a hotel after arriving. They try to understand the map after checking into the hotel. Frazer, on the other hand, doesn't understand anything and falls asleep. Nate works tirelessly all night, understanding the map and making notes. Frazer wakes up in the morning and sees that he has comprehended the map and made notes. She shows her wit once more as she departs for the treasure while taking the note. When Nate wakes up, he notices that the map has vanished. When he sees this, he starts to smile because he has mentioned the incorrect location on the map. Nate knows where the real site is. In the next scene, Nate arrives at the map's location. That happened in an island cave. Brett, on the other hand, has been keeping an eye on Nate. Nate, on the other hand, reaches the cave by jumping into the water. He sees two giant ships, and many people have died while seeking that boat. When Nate enters the ship, he discovers a large amount of gold. Meanwhile, he hears Victor's footsteps approaching. Nate is terrified as he watches this and wonders how he got here. He claims that you've connected me with your GPs. Brett arrives with her people when they are both watching the treasure. When they see them, Nate and Victor hide. Brett calls her team and prepares to board the ships by plane, because she is aware that the ship, in addition to the treasure, costs millions of dollars. Victor and Nate emerge and announce their intention to steal the ship. They approach the ship from the front, and then you start fighting the guard. Nate was also beating the guards. The guards are thrown into the water. They take over the ship after killing the guards one by one. Brett grows enraged when she notices this and attacks them with another ship. Victor was summoning a helicopter quickly in order to flee Brett's clutches. Brett was pursuing him as Brett's men attacked Nate's ship. Meanwhile, Brett was ready to hit Nate's ship as they all began fighting with Nate. As a result of Nate's attack on Brett's chopper, her helicopter is destroyed. Meanwhile, her ship collides with the mountain and is utterly destroyed. Brett makes his way out of there and lands on Brett's ship. She tells Nate that if someone isn't mine, they can't possibly belong to anyone else. She then tosses the ship's engine into the sea after saying this. As a result, the ship and the helicopter are unable to proceed. Victor's gold bag begins to collapse as well. He goes to save the luggage after putting his helicopter on autopilot. On the other hand, Brett and Nate are fighting on the ship. Nate tries to climb on the helicopter after fleeing, but Brett is after him. Victor sacrifices his gold-filled bag. Brett falls into the water after he throws the bag at her. Meanwhile, the ship's rope that is clinging to the helicopter cracks. Victor flips Nate over, but the ship as a whole falls on Brett. As a result, she dies, and the ship, after breaking, begins to float. We can still grab this gold, Nate tells Victor. Victor, on the other hand, comes to a halt and declares that it now belongs to the government. They're on their way to seize it, and Victor is forced to drive the helicopter. Nate encourages him not to be sad, and he slowly pulls the gold out of his pocket. Both of them start off on a happy note. We witness a motorboat chasing Victor and Nate at the end of the movie. She is no one else but Frazer, whom Nate befooled. We see that Nate's brother was still alive and imprisoned. With that, the film comes to a close. Please like and subscribe my channel.